So the human brain is an ancient technology, all right? It was mostly developed and optimized and completed in an environment that is very different from right now, and an environment that was more than 100,000 years ago, all right? And in that environment in which our ancestors actually evolved, the human brain is what kept us alive, all right? Our ancestors alive. And it did so by always keeping a keen eye out for the negative threats to our survival. All right, so basically the brain is a human survival mechanism that is designed to basically seek out any threats to our survival. And the problem is that because of exponential technology, we have reached a point in our civilization where our survival is no longer threatened, but we are still living with an ancient technology that is wired to actually seek out the negative things that would be there to our survival. And the thing is that in our current society, there's not much to our physical survival, and a lot of the stuff that we end up facing is because of our psychological survival, and then we go through that incessant thought which just holds us back from experiencing the positive emotions that we would want to have in our lives. All right, so in his book, Solve for Happy, Mo Gaudat goes over 7 mental bugs that maybe in a different time did help us survive, but in the current environment that we live in is actually hindering our progress towards becoming and living the best life that we are capable of living. All right, and if you haven't already checked out my video on the 6 grand illusions that hold us back from happiness, I'll link out to it below. Check that out before watching this video, because that is a critical part of this happiness equation as well. But right now I'm going to dive into the 7 mental bugs that are holding you back from experiencing the positive emotions. All right, now the first mental bug is that of filtering. And because there's so much stimulus, because there's so much information out there for you to take in, the brain actually goes through a mental bug of filtering out the stuff that it does not deem important. All right, and there's a part of your brain called the reticular activation system, and that is what determines what is important and what is a priority for you to focus on. So as an experiment, this is something that you can figure out how the reticular activation system works. If I tell you right now to look around your environment and seek out everything that is brown, all right, you look around, okay, the tree is brown, all right, that wood is brown, all right, this thing is brown, and then after you've seeked out everything that is brown in your environment, you close your eyes and I tell you to tell me everything that is red in the environment. And chances are that it would be very difficult for you to remember the red things in the environment, because it was the brown color that is what your brain considered priority. And the reason that filtering actually holds us back from experiencing life for what it truly is because many times we suffer not because we didn't achieve what we wanted to get, but because we failed to notice what life had already given us. All right, so filtering basically is the understanding that your brain is never giving you the complete picture. There's always stuff that's missing, and in order to catch this mental bug, you have to figure out any time that a complex series of circumstances are being put into a single sentence or something like that, so that you know that there's definitely a part of the picture that your brain is leaving out. All right, and that brings us to the second mental bug, and that is of assumptions. So after your brain has filtered through what it deems not important, it fills in the gaps of that story with assumptions. All right, and assumptions are basically like something that your brain comes up with in order to meet up its expectations, but it's nothing but a story that your brain has come up with, and it's not actually the truth. And anything that holds you back from seeing the truth is holding you back from experiencing life for what it truly is. All right, so the way to catch this mental bug is to figure out any time that you observe the inner dialogue in your head, and you figure out any time that you are going off of stuff that cannot be verified with your 5 senses. All right, so something that can be verified with your 5 senses is when you see something, when you hear something, when you notice something. That is not an assumption, because it's been verified by your 5 senses, one of your 5 senses, that is. But if it's something that is going off of words like I feel like this is the case, I think like this is the case, I hope that this is the case, or any such word that is not actually verifiable by your five senses, then you know that your brain is making assumptions to complete the full picture and therefore holding you back from seeing the truth. All right, and that brings us to the third mental bug in the brain, which is that of predictions. All right, so the brain is a prediction machine. It takes data points from the past and it mixes them with your current reality, and then it creates a forecast about what it thinks it will result in the future. All right, now obviously a forecast that has not taken place right now that is based in the future is not something that has happened yet, and something that has not happened yet is not the truth. All right, so predictions, the problem is that a lot of times the prediction that we have, the hypothesis that we have in our head of how we expect something to behave or expect life to behave, then ends up affecting our own behavior, and then our own behavior ends up actually affecting the outcome of the situation, and then basically it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. All right, and the problem with this is because if you have a negative prediction about how you expect life to behave, because as we went over, the brain is wired towards seeking out the negative, then it ends up actually coming into fruition as well, because it altered your behavior and that behavior was in line with your prediction. So the way to catch this mental bug is to observe the inner dialogue once again, and to notice any time that you are using words that are based in the future tense. All right, because anytime it's based in the future tense, those words are a prediction, and a prediction is not actually true, and anything that is not true is holding you back from seeing life for what it truly is. All right, and that brings us to the fourth mental bug, and the fourth mental bug is that of memories. All right, now memories are basically, we tend to think of them as records or archives of the past, but really they are just a perception of the past, of what we think is actually true. And the way they hold us back is because we tend to mix our memories with our current reality and use that to create an augmented view of the present moment. All right, but memories are not entirely accurate because it can be impacted by a number of factors, like your emotional state, your mental state right now. For example, you can have one memory but have completely different perceptions of that memory based on how you feel right now. That's why they're not an accurate data point to use in order to make your decisions in the present moment. So the way to catch this mental bug is to analyze your inner dialogue once again, and anytime that you are using words that are associated with the past tense, then know that that is something rooted in the memory, and that memories are not always accurate, and therefore you should step back and figure out what the most rational decision for you to make is, which is not based on your memory. All right, and that brings us to the fifth mental bug, and that is of labels. All right, now labels are something that our brain uses to make quick decisions, and it does so by removing the context. All right, but the bottom line is that without context, that is not actually the truth, because without context we are missing out on the details that actually tell us about what the situation or the person is actually like. And this is something that before I ever got the experience of traveling, before I got the experience of meeting basically hundreds of different people from hundreds of different countries, I used to have this label of what I thought Americans were like, or what Canadians were like, or what freaking English people were like, because it was based on all this information that I got from the media or what I got from anyone else as well. For example, I currently live in Medellin, Colombia, and people have the perception that, oh, it's a drug capital, and yo, how much coke did you do when you were there, etc., etc. But the bottom line is that that's just a label, and once you actually go to the place, then you figure out what it's actually like. But the labels, yes, they provide a punchy statement, they provide a snappy judgment of what things are like, and your brain is able to make decisions faster because of them, but it does so at the loss of accuracy. All right, and like I was discussing the Colombia example, like when I was in Colombia, people were like, yo, where are you from? I'm like, yo, I'm from Pakistan. And then everyone's like, yo, terrorist, bomb, etc., etc., because that's just the label that has been assigned due to mainstream media. But The truth of the matter is that it always comes down to context, and there is no such thing as a short punchy statement that can describe a whole nation or describe the whole person as well. All right, so the way to catch this is that anytime you observe your inner dialogue and you notice yourself making short snappy judgments about something that is actually way more complex than you think it is, then that is the moment to step back and seek out more information about the context so that you can make a more rational judgment about the situation, circumstance, or person. All right, and that brings us to the sixth mental bug, and that is of emotions. All right, now we tend to think of ourselves as logical beings, that we're making decisions based on rationality, but the truth of the matter is that we are actually driven by emotion, and many of the decisions that we end up making are actually because of how we feel in a particular moment or something like that. And then once we make that decision based on emotion, we actually end up justifying it with logic. All right, but many times emotions are also impacted by external circumstances, and they can hold us back from making the optimal decision, and that could be a mental bug. For example, you would do something when you're angry which you wouldn't do if you were calm, cool, and collected, and that decision could hold you back from actually expressing yourself in your highest way, doing something stupid, and then that having a lot of consequences down the road because you just did something out of emotion. All right, so the way to catch this mental bug is to observe your inner dialogue once again, and anytime you see the words coming up like I feel, I hate, I love, or any other strong emotion like that, know that you are being driven by the emotion, and that's the time to take a deep breath, step back, and figure out the rational approach to the situation rather than the emotional approach. All right, and the final mental bug is that of exaggeration. All right, now your brain tends to exaggerate certain circumstances in order to get your attention. All right, and the best example of this is because a lot of situations, like for example plane crashes, shark attacks, terrorism, these are the things that a lot of us end up fearing. All right, because it's an irrational fear at the end of the day. If you're scared of flying, that's an irrational fear, because you are more likely to get killed walking down the street than you are by actually flying in an airplane. All right, and I think actually dogs kill more people than sharks ever have, but the brain, it brings that to our attention by exaggerating it. And at the end of the day, it is a survival mechanism, but it's irrational to be scared of flying but to be completely okay with driving a car, because statistically you're more likely to be killed driving in a car accident than you are in a plane accident. All right, so the way to catch this mental bug is to notice anytime you are using huge blanket statements like, oh, that was a huge, like words like huge, tiny, or anything else that's exaggerated, that's time to step back and figure out whether that's something that your brain is going through to get your attention, or whether that is actually the case, and then figure out what the rational standpoint of your thought should be and what the rational decision should be after that. All right, so that is the 7 mental bugs that our brain evolved as a survival mechanism, and yes, they kept our ancestors alive in the harsh environments they evolved in, but in the current environment they're actually holding you back from seeing the truth and living a life of positive experience. And so much of our life experience is actually dictated by our thought, and so much of our thought actually ends up being inhibited by our brain's primal mechanisms that evolved in an environment very different from right now. But if you can get perspective, step back from that, gain awareness, and enter that cool, calm, and collected state of mind, then you can make better decisions and also feel better about the way that life truly is. Because once you can see the truth of life and see reality for what it really is, then you realize that everything is exactly how it's supposed to be, and that nothing is actually how it shouldn't be. All right, so if you haven't already, check out my other video on this, on the 6 grand illusions, and I'll be filming another one on the ultimate truths as well. These are ideas that Mo Gaudat goes over more in depth in his book, which I highly recommend, Solve for Happy, subtitled Engineer Your Path to Joy, and that is definitely one of the most influential books that I've read in my life. With all that being said, if you haven't subscribed already, make sure to click the button below, because you will get more content like this and figure out more tips and techniques to live and enter your personal power and purpose as a man. This has been Mo Salim from Triple Your Tea and mosalim.com, and I'll see you soon.